Hal Hall knew Wendell Robie growing up in Auburn, but they got to know each other better when they were in college. Wendell was offering Hal a job at the bank his father founded, Hart Federal Savings and Loan. We asked Hal Hall, how did Wendell Robie begin the Tennis Cup?
There's a number of stories floating around out there about how the event began, how he was one of the founders of the event, and why did it become this world-renowned event. The most popular story that people tell is that it was based on a bet. He explained to me that there was a invitation to the Sacramento County Sheriff's Posse to come up to these very foothills and on a spring day travel by horseback from Auburn up the Middle Fork of the American River, where they stopped along the banks of the river for lunch. And they had this discussion of whether horses today, then 1954, were of the same ilk or were of this as good, if not better, than the horses of the Pony Express, the cavalry, you know, that sort of thing. It was Pony Express, cavalry, and maybe another. And there was some doubt as to whether the horses were as tough and enduring as then. Wendell was convinced that they were even better. And thus the idea, well, what would you do to prove that? And the idea, the notion Wendell had was, well, I know of a trail of 100 miles in length, and I think we could do it in a day's time. And so supposedly they bet $500 or whatever, some amount of money, and thus was the impetus to the event. And to prove that he could do it, and he invited others, there were 5 that started the event, including himself. 4 wound up finishing. And to prove that they did it, they were sworn in as postal carriers up in Tahoe City. The postmaster swore them in, and they carried the mail. So the postmaster in Tahoe City was up at 5 a.m. on that Saturday morning, early August, stamped the envelopes that were carried in the saddlebags, and when it came time to get here in Auburn, the postmaster here in Auburn gathered the mail and canceled and stamped and canceled the envelopes. 4:21 a.m. or something like that. So they started at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning and finished at 4:21 on a Sunday morning in Auburn. So that proved that he could do it. Now you ask, you know, to that extent, the progress that was made afterwards. He made it an annual event, and it gained in popularity every year thereafter. But mind you that the first 4 years of the event's history was just a ride. It wasn't until 1959 that he invited William Tevis, the grandson of Lloyd Tevis, to come to Auburn, convinced him to donate a cup for the first place prize.
Next question is,
was helping set up the ski industry a full-time job for him or merely a hobby?
It was more of a hobby. Now, mind you, there was a business twist to it. So here he was, he'd read about the skiing in the East Coast. He lives here in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas and looks up in those mountains every winter, and he was a participant back in the day with the dog sled derbies that were held between Truckee and Tahoe. He actually raced dogs, dog sled derby racing. It was a timed event in stages. You started in every 2-minute intervals. A racer would begin, and you did the course and they timed you. So Wendell was interested in promoting wintertime sports here, but skiing had yet to be established in Northern California. So he did a number of things to get that started, one of which was to lobby the California State Legislature to make Highway 40 Interstate 80, and he actually had a caravan of legislators from the Assembly and the Senate come up to his property in Cisco Grove, where he established a rope tow. It's it's not a chairlift, but it was you grab a rope and it took you up the mountain, and it's called a rope tow. And it was in Cisco Grove on some of his forest properties. He had acquired skis for everybody, gave them a quick lesson. They all fell down and they had a great time. And it was a lobbying effort to, do a very, but I think the idea of an interstate highway was being developed. Could it be in this area? Could it be that skiing could be a part of, a wintertime activity and that sort of thing? I don't know a lot more than that, other than he got it going. He owned property which is now known as Boreal Ridge, a ski resort, and he sold that property, or actually may have donated that property to the Auburn Ski Club, and thus the Auburn Ski Club was developed. There's a museum there that he was instrumental in the beginning, and also enticed others. Like in 1960, by 1960, we had the Winter Olympic Games in Squaw Valley, so he had a lot to do with getting that all started.
How would you describe the dedication to the sports that he did?
I think he was serious about it, whether it be some form of recreation, riding, running, skiing. He liked to go fishing, I know. He told me about different fishing holes along the river. Things of this nature. He was a promoter of Auburn and a big believer of it. He was born and raised here and passed away here. So studying corporate America and watching Wendell operate the bank, and by this time he was just the chairman of the board, but he still ran things his way. It was an interesting to see how it all unfolded. A little unorthodox at times, but I can understand the reasons. But again, he had really good experts running the business for him. He didn't have to do much.
Well, thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Wendell Robie was a hero because without him, Northern California wouldn't have as many of the horse and running trails or ski resorts as it does today.